take us through?
Yeah, he just called and said congratulations. I said thank you, and I wish you and your wife well. It was a pretty short conversation. It was not unfriendly, and it was to the point.
At his concession speech,
He did mention something about you calling, you writing him. He was un-American. No, he didn't mention it. He just goes all about you in the end, Joe. So.
He said in his concession speech that he admired you as a leader. Is that kind of a run contrast to what happened during the debates?
I don't know. I put that behind me. I want to continue to look forward. I don't have much opinion or thought about him, I'll talk certainly about the race, but I think the race, in the end, it wasn't what he, as I tried to say last night, or as Connie said last night, these races too often become candidate A versus candidate B. This race, my focus always was to make this race about the waitress in Waverly, the farmer in Waldo, the steel worker in Yorkville, the auto parts company and worker in Lima, all people whom we met on our 7-day auto tour, jobs tour around the state. And, I think that voters, even with $40 million more, far more than money than ever been spent in any Senate race in the history of the United States, even with all that money in attack ads, I think the voters saw that I tried to keep the stories and the focus and my work in Washington on those people that build our country, the small business person, the worker, the entrepreneur, the teacher, the firefighter, the farmer, and that's really how I've tried to do this job for 6 years.
What does the race tell us then about modern campaign financing and the implications in future campaigns? Is this going to be the norm?
I think voters will, in a funny sort of way, welcome beer ads, car ads, and detergent ads now. I think that voters were sick of this. I think voters were particularly sick, not just of the quantity, but of the nature of the attack ads. When you have $40 million and it's anonymous and it's secretive money, by and large, sent through another organization, you end up with even less accountability than when the candidate at least has to say, I'm Jane Smith, I approve this message. So it's clear what we have to do. What we tried to do last year was the Disclose Act, at least to report all this money. It was filibustered by Senate Republicans. I'm hopeful that they see how insidious this is for American politics. And I know voters don't care much about process, but voters should care when an oil company can come in or a Wall Street bank can come in and intimidate a member of Congress because that member of Congress knows in the next election she might be the target of those millions of dollars. The significance of this victory yesterday, was that it might make some of my colleagues a little less intimidated by this outside money. It might make the outside money, as typically sleazy as it is, a little more reluctant to come into a state. And so the victory last night was not just for the middle class in Ohio. I think it sends a message nationally that we have to fix these awful kinds of campaign rules, and at the same time a message to both sides that if you're going to spend the money here, it's probably not going to work. And if they're trying to spend it against you, you can fight back with a strong middle class message.
How do you go about doing that, and do you do that almost immediately when you go back to Washington?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping we can get Republicans and Democrats together and begin to work on that. I got a lot of calls from my colleagues leading up to the election and last night, most of which I didn't take last night because I wasn't speaking, but on my cell phone, my voicemail, that, how I won't go into that, but just proud or that they noticed how much money was spent here and that you can still win in a very much a swing state where the president was running a close race, that you can still win with a lot of money against you.
How much of a role did the auto bailout play in this race?
I think the auto bailout was essential, but not just the 800,000 jobs, as if that's not enough. And the 800,000 jobs, as you know from Center of Automotive Research, connected directly and indirectly with that industry. I think it also was a character question in many ways. Are you going to stand up? Are you, as an elected official, going to do what President Bush did, then President Obama did, what Senator Voinovich did, what I did, and others that represent a lot of people that work in this industry? Are you going to stand up and take an unpopular stand? It was clear that voters in Ohio and Michigan didn't even think overall, at the time, if I recall, didn't even like the idea of this auto rescue, let alone voters in states that had significantly fewer auto-related jobs, although every state has a lot of auto jobs. So I think it was a question of character, a question of leadership, and I think the voters saw that. And ultimately, when some of you covered these large and small rallies where I went, where people don't underestimate, I don't mean to sound preachy here, but don't underestimate how important these stories are. And I mean, you trade in stories and facts, and you know what that means. But to talk to what I said in the debate, to talk to that Toledo worker who was almost sure his plant was going to close, and who said, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to support my kids? How can my daughter continue at community college at Owens? And don't underestimate the power of those stories. And ultimately, voters like that, they're not looking liberal, conservative, progressive, moderate, whatever, left or right. They're looking for an elected official who has their back. And ultimately, auto workers, waitresses at diners across the street from the steel plant, sound system manufacturer for the crews, workers at these places, and managers at those places understood I was fighting for them and I was on their side. That was why we're able to deflect $40 million.
And do you think that was the deciding issue on the federal level?
I think so. Yeah, I think but I think deciding per se directly auto rescue, but speaking of so much more. And President Obama, I saw him on what day was he in here? Monday night, when he was Monday afternoon at Nationwide with Jay-Z and. Jay-Z. Wait, do you guys want me to do that? You know, Elizabeth and Connie started.
Shaking videos right here.
But we were talking about, I said, you know, the auto rescue is really making a difference in this race. And he nodded. And he said to me, remember how unpopular it was even in Ohio and Michigan when we did it. And that's what leadership is. I mean, that's why President Obama was seen as a stronger leader. I think two things: seen as a stronger leader as a result of things like the auto rescue, principally the auto rescue in this state, and was seen as somebody who cares about people like you and me, because he knew the auto rescue had to be bipartisan. It had to be a partnership between the federal government and local communities and businesses, and it had to always have a middle-class focus. And that's why the auto rescue loomed larger than it might otherwise.
Senator, you've already mentioned a Republican filibuster, which brings us to the next point. Republicans still control the House. You do not have a supermajority in the Senate. With the fiscal cliff coming, where is there room for compromise? How do you see this problem being tackled?
Well, I think there is room for compromise. I've tried to do it by, you know, every time I get an idea from a roundtable or you know, I'm out speaking to people and hear things, I take them to Washington, I find a Republican to work with it on. It might be the bus safety bill with the senator from Texas, or the farm bill with the senator from South Dakota, the currency bill with the senator from South Carolina, senators from Alabama and South Carolina. So I do that every day or every week and try to figure that out. I think the fact that Mitch McConnell said what he said about President Obama, that's over with, that's done. We can look forward. And I think also, I think more members of the Senate will start doing what I've tried to do. I'm not the only one, but to see that as a formula. And I think ultimately the business community is going to begin to put more pressure on kind of recalcitrant House members who have not always done what's best for the business community. Transportation, long-term transportation bill, dealing with debt problems, in freezing the financial markets, which happened for probably 6 or 8 weeks, and there was no real and private investment in the summer of 2011 because of that. So all of those things tell me that there will be more compromise and more working together.
Would you be willing to support some changes in entitlement spending in exchange for letting the tax cuts on the wealthy expire?
The tax cuts on the wealthy should expire, period. I will never go along with raising the retirement age on Social Security or Medicare. All of you, you know, I hear a lot of people in Washington dressed like this say, you know, we're going to have to raise the retirement age because people are living longer. They should spend an hour in the plant, in the Navistar plant in Springfield, Ohio, and watch a 52-year-old woman that was helping to, been there 20 years, helping to assemble a semi, a big truck, and how she had to pick this piece up, step up on the truck, reach time after time after time. Unless she is Superwoman, she can't do that till she's 70. And I will draw the line on the principle of raising the retirement age in Social Security and Medicare. I think it's wrong. I think the people that preach it are people that don't understand the waitress, the factory worker, the construction worker, the dime woman at the retail person who works in retail, and somebody who's working at desks all day. You can't work that. You can't physically do that until you're 70. There are ways to do this. We can, lifting the cap on Social Security is something that can work. We have major cost savings in Medicare, allow the government to negotiate drug prices, the way the VA does, saving billions of dollars, working in a more focused way on biogenerics to save billions of dollars in this new class of injectable cancer drugs and injectable other drugs that are really the exploding part of one of the exploding parts of healthcare. There are a lot of things we can do. Raising the retirement age on either of those programs is not one of them. Last real quick story, I was in Youngstown at a town hall, and a 62 or 63-year-old woman stood up and she said, she was talking about the Obama healthcare law. She said, because it wouldn't take effect in time for her at this point in her life, she said, I just have to live a year and a half more so I can be eligible for Medicare. Think about that. She doesn't have health care. She's just trying to stay alive so then she can get health care. Why would we make that harder or worse?